Hi, I'm Cheryl and welcome to the Sewing Room channel. This is Beginner's Cross Stitch Lesson 2. Now I'll be doing just a very brief review of what we learned in Lesson 1, but in this one I'm going to focus a lot on border stitches. So I'm also going to show you a new book that you can begin working out of where there's a lot of border stitches, but also a lot of fun little patterns that you can use for a lot of the holiday seasons and to create gifts. And I'm also going to show you how to do a border, or a recommended border I should say, for this letter S, which was in the book that I showed you in Lesson 1. So let's get started. I'm going to review the full cross stitch. This is something you learned in Lesson 1. Remember, for one cross stitch there are 4 holes, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. So to do a full cross stitch you work from left to right. So you come up through the bottom left and go down through the upper right. To complete the stitch you come up through the lower right and then go down through the upper left. Now if you were doing a full row of cross stitches, here's how you would go about it. So I'm going to do just half cross stitches. So I'm going to go from the left, lower left to the upper right, and I'm just going to keep doing that, going across however many number of stitches that you're working on. And there we go. And I'm just going to do one more. Now to go back and finish the row, you're going to come through the last stitch, come up through the lower right, and go and finish the stitch in the upper left. And you just keep going back that way until your row is complete. I'm going to do one more to finish it up. Okay. Now, half stitches. Over here, there are half stitches going one way and half stitches going the other way. So they can go in either direction. Some patterns you're working on may ask for just half stitches. These are quarter stitches. So you come up through a corner and you go down through the center. And they can come through any of the corners, the upper corners or the bottom corner. So I'm going to go over here and show you. So I'm going to just come from the lower left corner and you just go right down in through the center. This one over here is a 3/4 stitch. So you first would do the part where you go through the center, and then to complete it you go back this way. And that's how you do a 3/4 stitch. Sometimes some of your patterns make request that you do a back stitch. When you do a back stitch, most of the time it's asks you to use just one strand of embroidery floss. In your regular stitches you usually use 2 strands of embroidery floss. Over here is the letter P, and the back stitch is used not only to outline it, but also to complete the letter. So you often see it used in doing lettering, but it's not just limited to that. I've done flowers where you had to do back stitches. So here's how you would do a back stitch. You would come up through, so if I want to start on this side, I'm going to come up through the lower right hand corner. So I've already come up. Now I'm going to go back up towards the top and complete it. So I've done one back stitch. Now I'm going to come up through the next lower right hand corner there, come up, and then go down. And you would keep doing that until your area is covered with your outline stitch. Now, if you were doing a letter like this one here, I'm going to work on this part right up here. You're going to come back up through the lower right hand corner, and I'm going to go back towards the lower left corner. And then I'm going to just keep going. Going to go through here and back. So you always go forward one little hole and go back to the previous hole. And you keep doing this until you've covered whatever area you need to do. I'm going to do one more because I want to show you how to go and do these little diagonals. So now I want to create this curved area of the letter P. So I'm going to go down to this in this next row below in the lower right hand corner and come up. Now I'm going to go across over to this hole right here and go down. And then you would just continue going down this way. And I'm going to do a couple more and one more. And now I'm going to cross down to this lower left corner, going into the row below, and then coming over, back up there, and then to complete this little curved area here, you're going to continue on until you need to stop, which is right here. And that's how you do a backstitch. Oftentimes, I like to put a border on something. Even if I'm just doing an initial, I like to put a little border around it. And one of the easiest borders to do is just do a single row of stitches across and down, all the way around it. So you have like a little box. Here's another really simple border that you can do. I did 4 stitches across, then I went down to the next row and did 4 stitches. Then came back up and did 4 and back down. And it's kind of almost like a little zigzag. Another type of border that's very basic and easy to do is do 4 stitches. So I would go across this way and come back to finish the row, go across this way, come back to finish the row. Then I would come back up over through here and repeat that process. And this is a really simple border and really easy to do. Here's another one. There's 3 stitches in this row and 1 above and below in the middle. So it almost looks like a little X. You could do a whole row of these. One of my favorite types of borders are these little geometric borders. This one here. One of the things you need to keep in mind when you're doing a border is do one little area at a time, because it's real easy to get off and have it all out of count. Remember, it's counted cross stitch, so everything has equal spaces separating each area. So the one way you do not want to do is do this row all the way over and then come back and then go down this way. You're wasting a lot of thread because you're stretching your thread. Also, you leave a lot of room for making major mistakes to where you'd have to pull it out. So I recommend just doing this area and then go over and do this little area and just continue like that. That makes it much, much easier. This one I really love. This is very bold. It's very contemporary looking. Again, work in a small area. And this is how I did this one. I started down here. I went up, doing full stitches with each one. I didn't do a half stitch. Did a full stitch till I got all the way up here. Then I went across doing half stitches and back. Then I came down here and did my row going over this way, and then this row down and went over. That's one area to do first. Then you would just repeat. Do full stitches all the way up, half stitch, complete the full stitch, come down, do this row, do one, and then do your row going over that way. And you again can go all the way across. You can do this on just the top of your design or on all of your edges. Another way is to take some of these really simple designs that I just showed you and combine them. So this is a solid row of just full stitches. So how I did this one, I went all the way across half stitch and came back. Then I counted down how many stitches I needed or rows I needed to leave open, and then I did this row and went all the way over with half stitches and then came back. Then I filled in this area, and it's that design I showed you earlier where you had 3 stitches across, one on the top and one on the bottom, but I changed the center color. So the 4 stitches around it are a light violet, and I did bright yellow in the middle. So they look like little flowers. So they're evenly spaced. I did about 3 stitches apart, but you can also make them closer or farther apart if you need to. In lesson 1, this is the book that I introduced to you, and I really do recommend this book. It's very affordable, and there's all kinds of letters and different ways you can do dates and names and really fancy monograms. So it's by Leisure Arts, also through Hirschner's, and it's Alphabets to Stitch, and it's just strictly cross stitch. If you haven't seen the video on lesson 1, that link will be listed below your YouTube screen. But in lesson 1, I showed you how to do the letters A, B, and C. These are really basic letters using 2 colors. But in this book, they also show you how to do those letters by outlining them. So there's a variety in this book. So I will be working from this book from time to time. So I do recommend that you get this book if you're interested in learning more about cross stitch. Also in this book are these really fancy monograms. And this is the letter S. This is my initial. And so all of them have this little flower in the center, and they've got little tiny flowers here and there on the outside. I've gone ahead and done this one on my fabric, my Ada fabric, and it really is pretty. Now, I didn't have all the embroidery floss that it recommends in the book. I was just using some of my scrap embroidery floss. So on these patterns, you can use any colors that you like. Now, also, in the book, they have a border pattern, which I've already started on, that you can choose to place around your monogram. So let's take a look at that border. If you're going to do the border, they recommend you do the border first and then put your monogram initial in the middle. So you're going to need to do some counting to find the center of your monogram so you know exactly where to start. So you do this first. It's real important you've counted everything correct. Then you're going to find the center of your monogram and start right in the center of this border. Here's one of my favorite cross-stitch books. It's by Better Homes and Gardens, 2001 cross-stitch designs. It's worth the investment. It was around $36 on Amazon. I just checked recently and it's still up there. And I'm going to show you some of the border designs that are in this book. In this book are dozens of border styles. So I've already shown you this one up here, and then I've also showed you this one down here. These are just beautiful borders. They have flower borders, heart borders, everything imaginable. Now let me show you how they did some of their monograms with borders around it. These are really simple designs. Now remember that one stitch I showed you about just doing a little box around a monogram initial, but they've also added little leaves here. And look at this. This is sort of in reverse. You're making it all solid stitches and then leaving certain blank spaces, and that creates a letter. So there's many, many different designs in here. This book is loaded with Christmas designs, plus designs for other holidays. So here's some lettering that you could do, and then here's just a few of the other little Christmas designs that are in this book. It is well worth the price. Kits can cost you anywhere from $10 to over $100. This was only $36, so this was a bargain. Here's a suggestion I have for you so that you don't get lost and figure out where you need to stitch next. I photocopied the letter S, and I also enlarged it, because when you look at some of the little symbols in those little squares, they're really hard to read, even if you have great eyesight. So I put the pattern in my photocopier printer, enlarged it, and then every time I completed an area, I would highlight it. And then as I'm going along, I would look for those areas that I haven't finished yet. And I haven't finished all the border yet, but I did get started on it. So I printed out the border and began to highlight those areas as I completed them. So before you think you are finished, scan your copy and make sure you have completed everything. Well, I hope you learned something new about cross stitch. Now, if you are doing the monogram, which I recommended that you do in lesson 1, try some of these borders. Some of the simple ones, if you're a little worried about combining things, these are really easy to do. Also, make sure you follow me on Instagram and check out my Facebook page. Thank you so much for coming by and checking out the Sewing Room channel. I'll see you next time, and happy sewing! I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click on the thumbs up button, and don't forget to click on share to share this video with your friends. If you haven't subscribed yet, click on that red subscribe button down there in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Click on the bell so you can receive notifications about my latest videos. I'm Cheryl, and this is Scotty, and this is Manny. See you next time, and happy sewing!